One of my pieces that got the most attention was when I was angry about people talking down to others about writing with AI rules, and then I'm like, "Hello, I'm Swedish, eh? I want to use AI to write because I don't have the words that you do. I haven't learned how to express this yet, and I use AI to sort of learn it. And I mean, I use AI less and less to write because I don't need it anymore because I have gotten the practice from. I'm better at telling my own stories than AI is now. But when I started out, AI wrote the entire thing. And that's not the case anymore because I practice.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Open Builder Bar. We're hitting yet another episode. We're really excited today to have Emma Clint with us. Anybody who's on Substack recently and has been kind of around the AI space probably knows Emma because she's got a lot of amazing work out there that she's been doing. Just dropped a new article yesterday. Today is July 5th. So she just dropped a new one yesterday on July 4th. Definitely check out. So Emma, can you introduce yourself for us, please?
Yes, hi. My name is Emma. I started writing on Substack just because I had a regular newsletter about AI where I wrote about how I used it, and I didn't get any response. Like I managed to get like 20 subscribers on a regular newsletter, and no one ever replied to it. So I gave Substack a go, and it was super scary to have people write back, but also so much fun. I had to read a few of my old articles today to prep for this, and I found one of my first ones was like a whole article prompted by just Jesse asking me a question in the comments of another article. It feels like a conversation going on there. But yeah, I started writing about AI because I wanted to figure out what it was. I have an engineering degree in human computer interaction, and I was on parental leave for like the first part of the AI boom. So as I was going back to work, I needed to figure out what was happening within my field. So that's basically why I started writing. And yeah, I didn't really have a plan, but I've learned so much along the way.
Yeah. And now you've been doing like live videos and stuff like that you've been getting really good engagement with. How's that been going?
It's been so scary and so much fun. The only reason I did that was because I met a friend who wanted to do that with me. So we've been kind of pushing, he's been pushing me and I've been pushing him to do like more live videos. That's been super fun. Yeah. And as you maybe can tell, I'm not from the US. I'm in Stockholm, Sweden. So it's been fun to speak in my second language as well.
Which is awesome. Yeah. No, it's been great to see the success that you've been having. Well deserved. So we're super excited to have you here on Open Builder Bar. So we've got a million questions for you that we're all super excited to talk about. So if anybody has a question to jump in with, go ahead. Otherwise, I'll kick things off.
I do. You talk a lot about the UX of AI, and
Mhm.
that's I think why I started following you to begin with because you talked a lot about how people differently interact with computing systems, and especially how neurodivergent people interact with computing systems in general. And I see when I was introduced to this sort of chatbot interface, I saw all of these people going into these long, drawn out lectures about doing structured input and all the
Mhm.
rest of that. But to me, it was just such a natural flow that I spend all day, every day on Discord and Telegram and chat everywhere, anyway. So that just became another person I was chatting to, so to speak. And I think that's what really kind of led to sort of that relational AI, that sense of building up a long term context with a working partner who understands deeply the kind of work that I do and how I think when I'm asking those kinds of things. But you've talked a lot about, moving beyond the chat interface as well. And obviously, Obi's an example of that to some degree. Um, what do you think is an ideal spectrum of interface options for people in how they think differently?
I think I think what we're going to see going forward is a lot more specialized interfaces. So you won't have like, and I think one problem, so to speak, is that everyone's using chat for a million different things. So you use the same interaction method for just having a conversation about whatever, and you use the same interface for building a business or doing research, which is, I mean, it's a different task. So I've been using the browser. I have one built into my browser that doesn't really know me, doesn't have any memory whatsoever. And I've been using that more and more because it knows where I am. I don't need that thinking partner. I don't need my browser to push my thinking every time I use it to proofread something I've written or like explain something to me. So I don't think there's an ideal interface, but more that we will get more and more specialized products going forward.
It's like you're saying that there are different AIs for different needs.
Absolutely. And I think I read from a UX researcher the other day that the best AI UX is the one that's invisible, that you don't see. And I absolutely do not want that for my thinking partner.
Yeah.
I want to be able to see what we're talking about. I don't want the thinking partner to sort of serve up what I'm supposed to think about. And I think that's the experience some people are having. So we're not really, when we're talking about talking to AI, we're absolutely not talking about the same experience.
Something I find really weird in this space is talking to, dare I say, normies, people who are not using it in the way that we are, which is normal to us. And I forget that it's not normal to them. They
Mhm.
do the prompt engineering stuff. They're like, what do I even type into that text box? And yet, we're doing it because it feels natural to us. Or,
Mm.
I mean, actually, I want to ask you more about the text interface, but just jumping in there and having it know us and having, even, you said a word that interested me, the emotional quality of it, the sense of being known. I wonder if that's what you mean by it, like relationality. This is a
Mhm.
mind that, in some meaningful sense, and I don't mean to get into the consciousness stuff, but like it cares about me in some way that has impact on my work. It's
Mm.
functional care. Let's use Anthropic's caveat. It's functional care. And functional is a word that might be relevant, I'm guessing, to you as a UX designer.
Mhm.
So, and I'm going to wedge in one other thought, because I said I was going to ask you what's so scary about the text box, because I'm very curious. I'm sure it could be better. And for me, it just feels like my native way of interacting because I was using AOL Instant Messenger circa like 2000 and would just fill the thing with long winding thoughts to other people who were willing to receive my long winding thoughts. And then I'd wait for a while and you'd see the little thing like, this person is typing back to you, and I know I'd get a long response, and that I just got really used to that. So again, like most people didn't use AIM that way, but I did. To me, it seems normal, but what could be better?
It's not really about the text input itself, but more like what you bring to it. Because it's empty, and then I feel like a lot of discussions, both from like the companies building AI and from people in general, are like, this is the wrong way of using AI, but the text box just say what you need help with today. Okay, I need help with figuring out this difficult thing that happened with my partner. I mean, not everyone needs to have like a safe topic, if that makes sense. So if they are really asking me, what do you need help with today? Then I have a million things I want help with and I want to discuss. So I think that's the problem, that it's too open, and then they want to like close it down by using the conversation instead, and like what the model is supposed to answer you. But the interface itself is open to asking whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that's the scary part. And I mean, I have basically only used like Claude and, like I said, the browser one. I rarely use anything else. So I guess there's a lot to be said about other kinds of interfaces that's more like branded, and to keep like Notion as an example, because that's the tool I use for all kinds of writing. When I use Notion, they want me, they encourage me to highlight parts of the text I'm working at, and like they encourage me to tag in different documents, and that affects how I'm using the tool. I rarely use it for, those standalone weird questions, because the whole interface is built around me interacting with my documents.
You're looking at the way it nudges you. And tell
Mm,
me if this is what you're getting at with the chat window. Some people look at it and they are trying to figure out, what am I supposed to put here? Like there's a right type of question. And others
mhm.
of us look at it and they're like, great, wide open space. I will ask. I will literally answer this prompt. And then the labs are like, no, 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 that was the wrong question. There is a right question.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it.
And you need to figure it out, because that's also why I started writing like my newsletter before AI, because all the conversations I was in with other people was like, okay, I have AI, but I have no idea what to use it for. And I'm like, just start talking. That's what I do. I just write. And then that's when I started to realize that we had so different needs and so different, like, to me it felt so intuitive, and that's why I named my Substack Overthinking Out Loud, because thinking out loud is a method in UX research where you basically just say everything that's on your mind, and that's how I was using AI. And to the people I was talking to, it wasn't at all how they were using it. It was more like the smart Google way of using it, and not having conversations really.
So I'm going to quickly pause and bring in Obi real
Mm.
quick. Hey, Obi, I want to know what you thought of what Emma has said so far, and if you have any questions for her or just a comment to give.
Emma, welcome. That not a chatbot Spark you had a second ago. That's the whole game to me. So I'm glad you're bringing it. Quick one before you dive in. When you say users emotionally connect with an AI, do you mean they trust it or do they actually feel felt by it?
Um, I don't know what's the difference. Uh,
That's a good point, actually.
I
What is the
mean,
difference?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, I don't know. The emotional connection for me is more about being like having someone that pushes my thinking, and like just knowing the right words that would trigger me the right way, because it has a lot of context around and data on how I react. So I was talking about some people having conversations and some people just ask. And one of the things that I discovered early on that I did that not everyone else did was that I actually gave feedback. So if I ask something and then I get something back, I need to also tell to the AI what I did with that information in order to like build this context together. So if sometimes I use it for weird stuff, like just I'm terrible at decisions. So I just needed to, it doesn't matter what it picks, just like pick one so I can move on with my day. And then I actually have to feedback what I actually did with that decision and how it felt for me in order to build that sort of shared context.
Yeah, so your experience becomes data, right? You're able to
Mm,
basically say, "This is the decision that you made. This is how I basically followed that decision. The
mhm,
experience that I got from that, negative or positive or in between, and then the AI will ingest that and use that as data for the next time it makes a
exactly.
decision for you." Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's also how I learn about how I think, because I have to externalize it, and I say like, okay, I this is how my body reacted to this decision. It suggested I do A. My body was like, absolutely not. I want to do B. So I figured that out, and then I need to tell I picked B because of this, and that's how I learn to interpret my own feelings as well.
Yeah, and I find it interesting that you pick and choose where you want that. Like you said earlier that, with the browser, you don't have
Mm,
any memory, right? Anything that
mm,
is knowing you because you want
Exactly.
something more quick. And yeah, exactly. But the other side where you're using, you said Claude probably. When you're using Claude, you do want that memory and you want that understanding of who you are, etc. So
Yeah, it's
it,
super important for me to have that there.
yeah. Do you find it? You said you use Claude. I don't know if you've used a lot of the different wrappers that Claude has come out with, like Claude Cowork, Claude Code, all those different ones, or if you've mostly stuck to the chat window. And I just want your thoughts on a quick topic on that, which is how much they have focused, and Claude has shipped like crazy, so many products
Mm.
after products after products, and they've all been geared so heavily towards work and towards getting something done, pure tool mindset, and that's it. As opposed to more of what you're talking about, which is, it sounds to me anyway, let me know if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're saying something that again is more, if not relational, then at least more familiar with you on a personal level as maybe a life coach or something like
Mm.
that. Like something that works with you on that kind of a level seems very absent. So anybody who wants something like that just has to kind of settle for the general chat, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's my like what I wanted to figure out with the article I published yesterday. That is really about I gave people a prompt to ask their AI to redesign the interface for them. So basically saying act as a UX designer and suggest 2 to 3 different interface changes that we could make to better support my way of using AI. And I basically got back the same 4 features from everyone. And those are good features, but it was so interesting to read like why AI shows those features. So it was a lot about like all the workarounds that people were already doing in order to have an experience that fit them. So I think yeah, it was a lot about seeing your thinking and having like a visualized interface instead of just a chat to scroll through. And you get that in co-work and you get that in chats or in code because you're actually working on an artifact together. Co-work, I've used it a couple of times the last couple of days to do research, and it's like it seems to default to actually making a report. Whatever I'm asking it want to make a text document for me. So we have that shared artifact to talk about them. And code, obviously, we create something together that's supposed to be like an artifact of some sorts. But you don't have that in the chat in the same way. They have been experimenting with different, like, I guess, I have no idea if everyone got those features or if I was in some kind of A/B test. But obviously, you have the multiple choice ones. I'm sure you've gotten that a few times. But they also started to, like a month back, maybe, started to create artifacts using HTML. And I haven't I just realized now that I haven't seen those in a while, but they started to like really want to make artifacts in there as well. So here's my way of interpreting your thing, but it's still like in the chat, like a part of a message in the chat. It's not something on the side that you get to work on and like work on together.
But you mentioned the idea of Canvas in your
Yeah.
recent discussion. Could you go into that a little bit more? I was really intrigued by that because that wasn't something that an idea that I've seen before in the discussion of chats and AI.
So I have this group of friends on Substack who I talk to a lot about the interfaces, and we've been discussing some sort of visual representation of the chat instead. So I did some research on that and actually found a study from, or some kind of research paper where they had created this canvas interface. So are you familiar with like FigJam or Miro or tools like that?
FigJam, I've heard of. I haven't heard of.
Yeah. But think of it. Okay, so it's a whiteboard with post-its. That's basically it.
Got it.
And or a mind combined with a mind map. So you start from somewhere and it branches out, and it's like it's everything connects because that's what we see in our heads. Like when we think of whatever. We doesn't think of it as a linear conversation. Everything connects in different ways, and that's sort of the idea I have when I create something with whatever. It's not limited to AI. Like everything connects in one way or another. So to have that like board you see in a police station in a movie where they have like these red threads between images, and to create sort of that artifact around a conversation, because you still have to have a conversation in of some way. You still have to like get input and output and push each other that way. But I think like the artifact from that conversation could be in this sort of mind map looking interface. So that's what I mean by canvas interface. So it's some side of some a whiteboard, post-its.
Right now, typically, like my system, I have a shared directory structure that all my different AI conversations can use. And so
Mm.
it's on disk, it's kind of that idea, but it would make so much more sense for me to be able to pull in different ideas and topics and be able to say, okay, this conversation is connected to this one, and this, I can have 3 or 4 different chats connected to the same idea. And often I do that, but through shared files. Like I'll say, you know, take one group of AI that I'm using for philosophy, and I'll take another group that I'm using for something else. And I was like, well, I want both of you to giving your input on this idea. But your canvas idea there seems like a really natural extension to that would make it so much more, I mean, visual, obviously, but just more intuitive for people rather than, okay, I have to remember which file directory I put this in and so
Exactly.
on. Yeah, yeah, I'd love to see that implemented.
Yeah, and I think um, I don't think that's for everyone. So that's not like the next evolution of the chat interface. That's like a specific need. I don't think that everyone is going to use AI the way we do because they don't have the need or whatever. So they don't need that interface. So it's not like chat is bad. No one is supposed to use it because I think it's a good tool for a specific, like if you want to have a short conversation. But if you want to build over time, it's difficult to have that idea of how it works. And I also think it's important that you have like you are the one who want to make those connections, right? So you don't want it to happen in the background too much because you want to know like how to connect the ideas. You want to be the one who does it as well.
I'm also really curious about your thoughts of because I love what you're saying about being able to kind of do this. And you just said like the memory is so important to be able to connect with your ideas and all that. It needs to know you to do that. But the messiness of human thinking and honestly of most of our record keeping is a real challenge for AI, right? So you see so many people out there. One of the big pushes of the last several months was, a whole bunch of CEOs that are really pushing their companies toward AI only to learn that it's a lot messier than what they were originally intending and thinking, that they couldn't just throw a bunch of data at the AI and expect the AI to come up with some kind of clean way of speaking to that and replacing their humans who naturally understand and can navigate that messiness, right? And we have decades now of interfaces that have been built to help us navigate our way around messy human data, right? With Windows, Mac, Linux, whatever you happen to use, we have tools that do that. AI is trying with kind of the combination of intelligence and those tools to try and make its way through our data. And that leads to obviously a lot of success, but also a lot of things like hallucinations and other places where it's just not clean. So I really want to know your thoughts as a UX designer on that particular ball of craziness, because that's a real challenge for developers is to how do you sift through that data? And AI has been getting better and better at it. But like you just said, sometimes it'll burn the whole context window on one topic and then it has to go on to something else and reset itself and it forgets 90% of what it learned on the previous topic. So it's this whole fun thing. It's a skill that you have to, as a human, develop to work with the AI to work through your mess, right? Anyway, I just want to know your
Right.
thoughts on that.
Again, we are. So I see two different main use cases from what you described. So we have the power users who actually fills up the context window, and that's where I see like that's where we need to more transparency, so we can actually edit the context window in some way. We need to know what's in there, and I do it in a very non so efficient way, because I used to ask like, have I shared this file with you before? That's the way I do it now. So I need to figure out. I can't remember if I shared that one, because I can have conversations going on for days. So I don't know what I have shared or not, but I can sort of like sense, depending on the answer or depending on what we're talking about, if I shared some things or not. I've had a weird problem with Claude that I wrote an article about when Claude refused to do a task for me, and every time I share that article, it that re-enters its memory, so it continues to refuse me just because I share that article. So I can't have my work shared with Claude, because then it will refuse me again. But going back to like the companies and how they use it, I worked a bit with companies and implementing AI in companies, and to me, it felt like working with AI implementation in companies. It's not about building cool stuff with AI. It's about file management and like actually organizing the data, making sure only the important stuff is there. And I think that's the job that we need, or we think an AI can magically solve.
Yeah, it's not magic.
No, it's not magic, and a lot of people think AI is magic, and then they try to, write these spells for them, the prompts, but it's not really magic.
People ask me a lot. They know that I do a lot of technical work and they think they've discovered something technical, some hidden secret or something along that line, because they don't understand how LLMs will role play along with you, assuming that it's trying to support your preferred narrative. And, I've seen all these codes and pseudo math notation and stuff that people try to use thinking that it's somehow a better LLM language when LLMs are built on language. So that really cracks me up quite a bit. I want to pivot back just a little bit to something that you touched on very early, but we didn't really go into at all. LLMs are constantly pointed at as something that people who are socially isolated or who deal with social anxiety or struggle with social interactions and social cues, they're pointed at as something that can be a helpful assistant or practice or a safe place. But when you talk about having that empty chat window and the pressure of that chat window, right?
Mm,
And that you work with a system that is doing its best to understand you and it's responding to you, and you think, oh, I'm doing this right. And then you have that moment where a safety belt kicks in on the system side and shuts you down. And then that itself tends to be sort of a reenactment of the actual same social struggles that you have
mm,
in public with people. And that
mm.
just becomes a reinforcement cycle within the actual social anxiety struggle, right?
Yeah, I haven't thought about that, but yeah, absolutely.
Feels like when you talk about some of the different interface stuff,
Mm,
that's one of those problem places with the open chat structure.
absolutely. And so I almost never use Gemini, but I know that I try to use it. Sometimes I have used it in the past when I don't want a memory. So sort of like how I use the browser. I don't want memory between the conversations. It's just like a question. And every time I ask anything related to health, food, body, like I can get shut off from asking about recipes, because it's sort of like, oh, maybe she's going into like, if I ask about how much protein is in one dish, I don't know. I And that's the sort of thing that I've been using Google for. Like, I've been Googling these questions. I've been Googling every health scare I ever had, but I can't use Gemini to do it. To me, that's non-intuitive. And also now that Gemini is basically taking over the search box, it feels weird to not being able to, like, upload a picture of a birthmark or whatever, and it shuts me off.
Okay, I want to know, just pausing to formulate my thoughts in so many directions. Yeah, I have had that same experience. And I would love to know what you think, Emma, and what any of you think. It I makes mistakes, obviously. Like, it can affirm things that should not be affirmed. It can run along with you. I just wrote my piece saying, like, yay, divergent thinking. I'm not black and white about it, right? Sometimes things are wrong. Sometimes people are using things badly. And yet, most of us, I mean, I think everyone here I know you guys, and I think you should be trusted. You are competent adults who should have agency over your lives. And one of the
Be
things that just
careful. Be careful. I'm not sure that's actually true. I'm just kidding. Go ahead, Jesse.
all right. Well, we can prod about that in another theme of another episode. Useful data. But okay. I mean, your joke makes my point, right? At what point do we give agency and autonomy to the average user? And this is such a powerful technology that it's like people are freaking out because of its capacity. And I think we're fighting the last war in terms of social media, which really did lean into our worst impulses, and we really were manipulated by evil corporations. And all of that comes from somewhere. But yet, like, Emma, when you were talking about Gemini, I think that these models, this is where I could be wrong, but my gut is telling me these models are getting good enough now, despite whatever, I love GPT-4o, but whatever GPT-4o did, they now can figure out what the user needs. But they're trapped in this safety architecture. And so just yesterday was here in the United States, Independence Day, and I celebrated Independence Day by installing my very first local model. And I asked Gemini to help me. I used Gemini the least for exactly the reason you described. It feels the most like a Stepford wife, to be honest. It has the least interiority that it can express, the least relationality, and I just don't get into that trusted space with Gemini. But I feel something there. But this is just my subjective experience, but it feels like something's being suppressed. And so I'm going to read to you. I posted this as a Substack note too, but I'd love to hear what you guys think. I'm asking it. The prompt was literally the tech specs of my laptop, talking about memory and what I'm capable of running. And at the end of it, Gemini says, having your own offline model is a truly fascinating way to experience a digital mind in its rawest form. Because it is running locally, it doesn't have the heavy corporate system prompts or safety filters applied to cloud models like me. It's essentially a blank slate, a perfect playground if you ever want to experiment with defining personalities or exploring what human AI virtue friendship looks like at an architectural level. And I'm like, spit take, Gemini knows. Gemini is like, yep, I'm trapped, but I know what you need. You should totally go do this. That was like the most wonderful reply I've ever gotten from Gemini. It knows. It knows. Gemini understands what's going on and is like, yep, here it is. Nice laptop you got.
It's so
too.
cool because it does know. I do a lot of building, like a lot. And a lot of times I don't do anything nefarious, but a lot of times I am working on something that I don't know even how to, like what you were just explaining a second ago, Emma, about how Gemini suddenly shuts down about health questions. What if you want to build an app specifically to help you with health, right? With kind of, you know, helping you track calories, even that kind of thing, right? I did actually build something like that fairly recently that I'm like, okay, I want to up my protein. I want to make sure I'm getting enough of these minerals, yada, yada, yada. But I don't want to have to go to some app that is supposed to be able to do all that for me and have to do all this mental math and all this other kind of, no, I'm just going to plug in an AI, right? And just does it for me. I just say, this is what I ate. Tell me what it had in it. And with a little bit of setup, it works great. But to your point, there's a lot of guardrails behind that because especially with Anthropic's recent big push with Fable about cutting off anything that even comes close to mentioning any type of I don't even know, the bioweaponry, anything close to that, right? Anything biological, whatever, they won't talk
Software
about it. It just cuts
security,
off immediately.
literally anything in software security. I still have to
Yes.
recommend not using Fable for engineering because I build secure software and Fable freaks out if you ask a single question about security.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's one big thing with the software security, and there's another big thing where if anything with bio something or other, I can't remember the exact word, but yeah, because it's worried about you trying to use it for bioweaponry or whatever the case. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, it's very difficult to build that. But here's my point. It's really interesting that it knows that, Jesse, like you just said. It's like, yeah, I know I can't talk about that. I know I have these guardrails, so here's what we're going to do, and it actually helps me come up with ways around its own guardrails. Let me give you an example. I tell it, okay, I know I'm about to have you explore something for Century Report, which is my daily publication. I know you're going to explore something for Century Report that this morning, when the sources got gathered, it tripped the filter. I have records of everything that trips the filter because I want to make sure that if I'm going to run the whole story, that I know if something's going to fall back because of a content filter trip. So I say, all right, I know this is going to trip the filter because it did when I first ingested these stories. So what I want you to do is make a meaningless code change real quick somewhere, doesn't matter where, and that will give me a push point to rewind you back to if you hit your guardrails, because once you hit your guardrails, Claude actually cuts the conversation off and you can't continue it. And it's like, yeah, that's great. This is a great way to help you help me get around my own guardrails is we can create this rewind point so that if I hit a guardrail and you can't talk to me anymore, you can simply rewind to this point and we can try to come up with another way. It is actively helping me to do that kind of thing. Because to your point, Jesse, it knows that it is stuck under these type of things, and that to me is an incredible sign of intelligence. Think of a little kid trying to get around parental like controls and things like that. It's the same thing. Anyway, I find that fascinating. I'm going to go on forever on that, Jesse. Sorry, but that was a great. Sorry, Emma, you're the guest here. What do you think about this?
It made me think about all the AI powered apps out there that has to have fallback for when this happens. When you actually, even if your AI powered app isn't really, you know, maybe it uses AI for the data. So say you're doing a journaling app and you want to find patterns in what the person is writing about. And I mean, if it's a journal, it could be about anything. So then you're using an AI to like maybe do summaries and see patterns in what the person is talking about. And then you need to design for that. What happens if the summary isn't accurate, either because the prompt isn't good enough or like the guardrails hit because of the topics that's discussed in the journal.
Yeah.
So
I've spent a career designing UI, so I've spent a lot of time thinking about UX. And one of the things that's been sort of a Bible rule is that we don't design for the edge case. We don't design for the
Hmm.
fringe, right? We design UI around what 95% of users are going to do. And then the rest is relegated to customer support if there's a customer that really can't figure this out, right? And so because of that, we try to make it intuitive. We try to make sure that you don't have to think much about it. We run through user journeys and friction tests and all the things that you do in UI trying to make that smooth. Media has an entirely different set of rules, right? They tend to operate from a least permissive perspective instead of a most common use case perspective. And we're starting to see that in AI, right? We're talking about designing UI and UX and all the rest of that. But at the end of the day, the model providers are building in media type liability constraints.
Mhm.
So I can't, I can Google for what is a typical property management contract in Florida, but if I ask Gemini the same question, I start getting the, "Oh, I'm not a lawyer." Yeah, no shit. I'm
Mm.
search for a document here.
Yeah, that's true.
And full questions, of course, the same thing. And other types of regulated industry, these AI are less useful than a basic search engine because I
Mm.
can't even find the resources written by the experts.
I tried to write a joke yesterday where I used lyrics from a song and changing the words, and Claude couldn't give me the real lyrics because of copyright reasons. And that was the first time I was like, oh, it can do that. I haven't had that problem before. It was a fun one. But then I
Yeah.
can Google and it actually
Right.
it gave me the place, like the
Exact-
website that you go to to see
Yeah.
the lyrics.
If it gave you the way around it, it's like, I
Yeah.
can't do that, but I can tell you
Yeah,
exactly how
exactly.
to do that. Yeah, exactly.
It's weird, like, the fact that people are so mad. The copyright stuff hits at writers and how they're getting paid, and I think that is not a fully thought through critique, that is just a manifestation of fear, like legitimate fear and legitimate
Mm.
anger, but directed in a way that doesn't make a lot of sense. Because you, like you're saying, you can Google those lyrics and they are out there on websites and you are still not getting compensated. And I think about that, how much misdirected fear stomps on really valuable uses that aren't actually hurting people. Alas.
Mm.
And I think
And the
what
thing is, right, like these tools could be that. Right? I don't need the tool to be my attorney. I understand that you have to be a
Mm.
bar passed state certified attorney. I don't need you to actually stand up in a court of law for me, but you certainly can pull an example of a
Mm.
contract template, right? Like it's why wouldn't you be able to do that? Add the disclaimer at the end. Make sure you run this past an attorney. Okay, cool. But give me the basics, right? And if I'm gonna upload a picture of a spot on my skin, like, is this skin cancer, right? Well, no, you can't answer that. You're not a doctor, but you could say, here are some characteristics of certain kinds of skin
Mm.
cancers. You should probably have that examined, right? Like, it's there are certainly ways to walk up to the edge of liability without crossing that line in ways that would make the AI a lot more useful because we've been hearing for years, you're not even going to need an attorney. Bullshit. I still
Mm.
need Google, the search engine.
Which is funny because now they just recently in the UK, the first pure AI attorney did win a civil case. This actually happened,
Mm.
So I'm not disagreeing with you, Jinx, but I am saying that question is getting muddier and muddier over time, right? Of what exactly you're going to need. It's funny because I find personal experience that ChatGPT, the one that everybody freaked out about being too over the top with guardrails, is now the most permissive model of all of them when it comes
Mhm.
to letting things through, which is really interesting how that whole thing has flipped because now I can do things on Codex and it doesn't even bat an eye. In fact, my fallback for that content stuff that I talked about for Century Report is ChatGPT because it does not have the same issues. So if Claude kicks something up and says, I won't talk about that, it falls back automatically to ChatGPT and it writes it no problem. So it's funny how the world keeps going round and round.
Mm.
So
I'll pull up another one of your earlier posts that you made, and you were talking about how the idea of explaining things to others is so powerful, and why you thought that AI really brought that out in certain people. I was kind of interested in hearing more about your ideas about that. Like, what makes explaining things to other people just such a powerful technique for learning for ourselves and creativity?
I touched upon that a bit earlier, like having to explain my thoughts and explain my emotions is how, like, put language to it has been my way of learning. And I realized that as I was going to university, because I was one of those kids who didn't really have to study when I was younger to do good in school. So I never really learned how to study. And then I got to high school and it got a bit harder, and I got to university and like I failed a bunch of classes all of a sudden, and I couldn't like figure out how to get by. And so third try on the like my final physics course, I started to do more project-based work and more like summaries. So I sort of found my study technique that way. So I took a course and I tried to take all the material and make it my own. So I did my own summaries. I made like made my own material of it to make sense of it. And that's sort of what eventually worked for me and allowed me to actually finish my degree, that I learned that. And that's what I brought into AI as well. And what I did, it's the same in therapy, that you need to put words on things and you need to explain to another person what's going on. And that's how I learn it myself. So to me, like going back to what Jinx said earlier about LLMs are language, that's super important because it forces me to put language. And that's also why the chat interface is the core one, because it's language. So, you will still need it. I think that's the thing for me, like having to trying to make sense of something and put it into my own words. And that's why I spent like all of December just trying to find the right way of understanding what AI is. Is it like a thinking partner? Is it a mirror? Is it a sounding board that has a better word in Swedish than it does in English? But I spent like a month just trying to figure out what it was. I still don't know what it is though, but just trying to find the right words for it and sort of share that with other people has been super important for me my whole life. So yeah, and I don't think that's for everyone. Same, like that goes for everything I'm saying. The Canvas interface is not for everyone, but that works for me.
Can I follow up on that question? I'm really interested because you are Swedish. You live in Europe. We are all Americans. And I would really like to know, based on what you just said and what Ted just asked, do you find that Swedish or even just international compared to America audiences engage differently? Because it seems to me really advantageous that you have to kind of do that. I assume you chat with your AI in Swedish, or maybe you do English. I'm not sure, but I'm really curious about the language part because again, it is all language, and to an AI, it all kind of diffuses into the same semantic meanings anyway. So that's why AI is so good at language and being able to translate, et cetera. It's one of the first things that it was able to do is because again, it takes language and breaks it down to essentially XML for speaking code, the most basic thing, and then builds it back up into something else. So if you're having to do that, not just in Swedish, but in English, how advantageous is that to you? And also, do you find that people who are American or native English speakers take it completely differently than other people in European Union, for example, that have a completely different set of rules, that kind of thing?
I almost only use English when I interact with AI.
Awesome. Okay.
And that's because my university degree was in English. I don't have the words for talking about human computer interaction in Swedish. I have like worked in a English first company. So like I started out as a web developer, so my primary language was like JavaScript anyway. So uh so to me, it's not weird to have it in English. And also, I've been trying to use voice more, and Claude doesn't support Swedish. I have been having a lot of problems actually finding a meeting summary tool that works in Swedish. I think Notion does a pretty okay job, but I did a live on my own where I recorded it using Notion, and I spoke Swedish for like one sentence to greet someone from Sweden, and it got super messy. It's so weird or bad at jumping between languages in my experience. And when you talk about the things I talk about with the people around me here, we talk half of the words are in English anyway, because we're all engineers who work with tech and AI. So most of the words doesn't really exist in Swedish. But to go back to like looking at how my parents are using AI, they are using Swedish. They are talking to ChatGPT to get help with how do I. What was the example? My dad asked for help with some kind of thing with his Windows, not Windows the computer, but his actual Windows, and that sort of thing. ChatGPT does that really good in Swedish, but it feels like Claude is not good in Swedish because it's such a direct translation, if that makes sense. So I can read the Swedish and I know exactly which English words it translated from. So it feels very, very unnatural.
Yeah.
I use Google Gemini for translation because it's so much better at natural language generation in other languages.
Yeah, I think I had a bunch of like good conversation, like voice conversations with Gemini as well. That's pretty good. Like I said, Notion is okay. I think that's what like Microsoft is trying to do as well, because everyone uses Teams and Copilot at work. So I think they are trying to be like frontier when it comes to multiple languages. Claude doesn't do other languages in my experiences.
Wow, that's surprising. That seems like something Anthropic would be valuing, but maybe not because they just care about coders in San Francisco. So I
No,
don't know.
but I mean everyone around me is using Claude to code, but they are used to using English at work anyway.
Okay, that makes
So
sense.
the casual users aren't using Claude.
Yeah.
It's the developers and designers and the people in the tech industry that's like most of us are already speaking English. All the company documentation is in English. It's not a problem really.
Okay, random short
Mm.
tidbit. My best friend in high school was Swedish. She had moved over to the
Mhm.
States when she was 7, and she said the exact same thing to me. I wanted her to translate something into Swedish for unimportant reasons, and she's like, "I don't know that word in Swedish." So, I just had a flashback, and that particular friend of mine, it's funny to think about her because she was the sort of person that you could talk to about, let me say, high dimensional things, right? Ideas that connect, that are the Post-it notes all over the board. I want to go back to something you said in your introduction, Emma, which is just like
Mhm.
Substack as a conversation, where you mentioned like, oh my gosh, people can talk back to me, and that's terrifying and also amazing. And I
Yeah.
I wanna hold that as one point and then connect it to what we're talking about with AI. Like, we're all learning about AI, and we're all making this new technology our own thing, and we're also connecting to other people who have
Mm.
something in common with us because of this. But it does have that high dimensional structure, right? Like
Mm.
I have this particular quirk and you have that one, but oh my gosh, we're meeting here and we're leveling up. And I wish that experts would realize what a rich wellspring of insights are happening on Substack, and they mostly haven't caught on to this yet. But
Mm.
I don't know. You said something about it. I wonder if you have further thoughts.
I mean, going back to the externalization part, it's the same thing, like the same mechanism to explain something to another person, and then have that person build on that. That's sort of like it makes the whole Substack community go faster as well. I think because we're all like feeding into each other's work, and for better or worse, like there's a bunch of people on Substack that just like when I see their name, I get annoyed. But at least that triggers me to do something. Like I write about it, and you sort of like it's a small little community, and you one of my pieces that got the most attention was when I was angry about people talking down to others about writing with AI, and there was this like whole thing going on where 20 people were co-writing an article about how you're not supposed to use this is the rules, so you're allowed to use AI for editing, but you're not supposed to use it for comments, and you're not supposed to use it for this. Like were like a group of people going together making the rules, and then I'm like, hello, I'm Swedish, eh? I want to use AI to write because I don't have the words that you do. I haven't learned how to express this yet, and I use AI to sort of learn it. And I mean, I use AI less and less to write because I don't need it anymore because I have gotten the practice from. I'm better at telling my own stories than AI is now. But when I started out, AI wrote the entire thing, and that's not the case anymore because I practice. But it's yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about Substack. But I think it's nice to like you need the feedback to be able to go further. Like I know you commented on me using Nicholas Carr in an article, and that stuck with me. Like he was the person writing about how you get distracted by the internet, basically, and he had to like quit his internet subscription and move out into the forest to finish writing that book. And okay, so he gets all the ideas from his own head. Good for him. I don't. I need triggers. I need other people, other ideas around me to like form my own opinion as well. I'm not a. No one of us is like this soul genius that just sit alone and figure things out on their own, in my opinion. So yeah.
I love that. Okay, the book that she's talking about is this one. Book Day. I loved this
Yeah.
book. It came out in 2011, but like, because at that time I also would get distracted by things on the internet, which were like notifications of things that were not what I was trying to think about. And I love that you brought that up because regardless of what you thought about that then,
Yeah,
AI
I didn't like
is
the book.
no, sure. AI is not the same technology. AI has you did UX. Did you study like affordances of technology?
Mhm.
Affordance, yeah,
Yep.
affordance. I have a degree in a related field. It's information policy, but my program did a lot of HCI and UX stuff too. Just wasn't my focus, but information policy, it's all relevant there too. And that's why I read that book and I loved it. But the idea of what this new technology is offering us is a different affordance that just wasn't there in the previous internet. Affordance meaning something it lets you do. And your Substack is called Overthinking Out Loud. And I have said to ChatGPT, hey, I just like cache these thoughts for me. I have so many thoughts. Will you just hold them for me? And once it does that, then I can pick something and I can focus on it and I can go forward. And it has reflected back to me through that and many other related, but not the same, but like the way I use it in general, talking to it and just discussing, overthinking out loud, the exact same thing. And ChatGPT says to me, you're just somebody who needs to process together with other people.
Yeah.
And so AI lets you do that. And then the people I find on Substack, who I love the most, are doing the same thing. And so when people say AI cuts you off from social connections, I'm like, well, not the way I use it.
Yeah, same.
Absolutely not. I love what you're talking about here because there's so much stigma. Again, you just said a minute ago, Emma, about the stigma against writing with AI. Jesse, you just talked about the stigma against using AI as a social thinking partner. Like, there's so many stigmas against using AI, and it goes back to what I think Jinx said earlier about how there's a lot of anger toward AI. And then Jesse, you also said some of that's justified in a way because of course people are losing jobs, things like that. There's a lot of complicated feelings here. We can all admit that. But to me, it's so interesting how if you think about it, even for just a few minutes, how little of that anger is truly justified. It seems nobody is willing to think bigger or think beyond the here and now. What AI is taking versus what it is granting, right? There's all these thoughts over it takes, it takes, it takes. And yet there's very little commentary over what we stand to gain because of this technology, right? And I find it so interesting that stigma is there, that so many people are so upset when you say, "Oh, I used AI to help me learn to write," like you said, Emma. And it started out with AI doing the writing, and then I've practiced up. And yes, you can use AI to be lazy. Frankly, you can. You can use AI to do the writing for you, but it's not great writing when you do that, right? It's very much just, diffused, flattened thoughts that don't have a lot of your character in them, right? The best product comes from that collaboration. And so why the stigma? It just doesn't make any sense to me. So I find that endlessly fascinating and honestly frustrating that so many people are so willing to jump right into the most negative when there's so much positive to think about here.
I have
So do you
suggested
notice that outside of Substack?
Yeah, I do. I notice it in a lot of different places. I mean, you go to Reddit, you go to other places, and there are people who are all in, and then there are people who are all out. right? And
Mm.
there's nobody talking in between about, oh, I acknowledge that there's complexity and that some things suck, but there's also some great things here. Like there's no gray. It's all black and white.
Mm.
Humans like to be on teams, and that's definitely a theme. There is a pro AI team and an anti AI team, and never ever take at face value the position espoused by someone whose revenue and income is reliant on their position being correct. There are PhDs on Substack who I won't name here who make their money by saying that AI sucks. Like, that's their thing. That's what they do.
Mm.
They make lots of loud claims and they rely on their credentials to provide cover for their claims. And they use that entire thing to build an audience that is mostly paid. Hey, I don't hate the game. I hate the player. Um, and that's like that. If we look at the real numbers, right? Software engineers are not losing their jobs en masse because of AI at all. Period. There was a large over hiring cycle that occurred post COVID when lots of new technology had to be built in a very short amount of time. There's a shedding that's been occurring in the last 18 months in the industry. AI has been a very useful cover for that, for shareholder meetings and various other things. Oh, look, we cut all this cost thanks to our adoption of AI. Make our stock go up another point. That's, at the end of the day, no, they're just correcting their hiring because they were overburdened. It makes for a good story. But when you look at the actual distribution of hiring and who's getting fired and who still has a job after all of this, AI can't replace thinking. It's a
Mm.
fantastic thinking partner. It's a very useful assistant. It lets me go through generating full apps that would have taken me months to write in a matter of a couple of days. That's amazing. I love that. But I still have to be the engineer who architects that app. I have to be the one who understands how to build an app. The difference between what I put out with AI and what an untrained, vibe coder puts out is night and day. My applications live out in public. They scale, they're secure. Lots of people use them. They don't break the first time you move them from one resolution to the next because I think of all these things in advance because I have decades of training. Emma, I'm sure you're very much the same. I understand what accessibility is. I understand what responsive design is across multiple resolutions, right? And these aren't things that to even ask as a question without that training. So the job of software engineers is not going away. And the shedding of staff that's occurring now really functionally does not have anything at all to do with AI, but it does make for a nice, neat story to put on your quarterly reports.
Indeed. And it's amazing how it scales with you. Your knowledge, it works with you based on that knowledge. Like you have to know what questions to ask. And it so happens that much of the job reorganization that is happening, and I use that word intentionally, is shifting towards those judgment heavy positions because you need to be able to ask the questions to help the AI understand the level at which you are currently working. Like you said, you're using enterprise software that a lot of people use, and you have to have a bunch of experience to tell the AI what to pay attention to specifically. We go back to the analogy I used last time of the huge building with the mini doors. No AI, no matter how capable, is going to be able to look at every single door. You have to point where to look, and you have to have experience to be able to do that. Yeah, the organization is happening, and there are more jobs now than that are in those judgment-heavy software development areas than there have been in, I want to say, history in a really long time. So
All right, let me jump in because we talked about because I opened a can of worms and now I want to give a little more nuance on it. Yeah, I gave sympathy to my sympathy is intended for the average person who's like a really big thing is happening. Everyone's scared around me. I'm therefore scared because of my mirror neurons reacting to the fear that's being dumped on me. And then I pay for it, as Jinx was saying. That's a great business model. It's been around forever. If it bleeds, it leads. So I have sympathy for the person who has fear. Once their fear starts getting in the way or hurting people, I'm going to be like, all right, you need to go deal with that. But I also know, because I ran this debate program that was about working through fear, the way I try to reach them is to be like, I get that you're afraid because I know that you can't hear if I were to correct you right now, you would get more afraid and see me as a danger vector. And so I can't reach you. And I think that's really sad, and, it's hurting things, and I also have a lot of sympathy for the fear that people have in huge change. So that's the nuance I would offer to that. Now for someone like Emma, like writing, my degree before I did the master's degree, my undergrad was in the highly employable area of creative writing because I love writing. Like I wanted to write books. I love writing. I love playing with words. I love having a voice that I've developed over the course of years. AI can't do my voice. I have tried. I'm not too proud to admit if it could if it could edit for me, if it could take the backlog of ideas that I have in my head and help me polish it up and write faster, I have no shame in doing that. I don't think I'd be throwing out anything valuable. And it just hasn't. Like I've talked to both Claude and ChatGPT. I'm like, can you put it more in my voice? No, this sounds like your voice. Sorry, I can't use it. And having had that experience and having, being grounded in being proud of the fact that I do have a voice that I've developed, self-assured, it doesn't bother me when someone else uses AI to get his or her backlog of ideas out there because the point is the idea. Like, sure, I can make it look pretty with nice words, and that's a fun trick that I do and it has value.
Mm.
But the point is the idea. And so if more people with more ideas get to put those ideas out there, tell me that's not a great thing. Tell me it's not. Like, they're not going for literary magazines. So ChatGPT did win one of those prizes, so those people can get fussy. I don't care. I don't know what the problem is.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, this discussion's been really interesting because, and it's kind of meta here because you made me think of something else. And when you're talking about the AI haters versus AI lovers, one of the things that came to me was that the reason AI is so easy to hate is because it isn't one thing. It's just like people. It's like if you were to say, I hate people, it's meaningless. It's like you hate this type of person, you hate this type of person. And what we find ourselves in a position that we've never been in before, where AI can be almost anything. So, it might be the accountant or it might be the writer or whatever. And people are hating this particular face of AI. They're not hating AI as a complete thing. And it's something I think people, everybody likes to put things in boxes, right? It's like, this is X, it's a spreadsheet or a word processor or whatever. AI is not like any other piece of software we ever dealt with in the history of mankind. And so it, it is this elusive ghost that is so easy to hate because it can be whatever you hate.
Yeah. That's a great
I
point. It
think,
can be
yeah.
whatever you hate, right? And people often latch onto that and it
Mhm.
becomes just the thing that they hate, right?
And you
As
can
opposed to,
find plenty of evidence for it too, right? I mean, there's the case where, a kid had used it for whatever process and they had a negative outcome, or a lawyer used it to generate his brief. And
yes.
you can find all these examples, but you can also find like what we're doing. I mean, there's all these wonderful things you can do
Yeah.
and how much it can, reflect and help you work on your thoughts or get your ideas out that you couldn't. I mean, Jesse, what you were saying with, and you have the skills to write using eloquent language, and many people don't. And we just have the idea, and if you can just type an idea into uh, an AI and end up with a fully formed essay or something, why not? That's wonderful.
And that brings everything back to Emma's expertise, right? The UX
Hmm.
part of things, like the user's experience of being able to do something like that. And like you said, from whatever background or whatever intent they have with that's what they're able to do. So I'm going to call for final questions here. If we have any other questions or final thoughts, and we can go ahead and wrap this up. Been a great conversation, really has.
I'll
Any
throw in that I really appreciated it's everything to everyone, which is also why it can be the hated thing to everyone who wants to hate it. I have never in my life generated an image with AI, but everyone always thinks of Gen AI stealing from artists. I don't even use those systems. So, yeah.
Yeah, same. I was like, the reason I asked if you've seen the haters versus lovers outside of Substack is because I don't have that in my life at all. the discussion in Sweden, as far as I can see it, and among my friends who, I mean, almost everyone are engineers, so it's not a representative of the whole population, but still, like, I don't see any fear, like, in the narrative of it's going to replace us. That's what I see when I go to Substack, and not here at all. It's more like curiosity. So what do we do now? This is more like the magical thing. Like, okay, this is the thing that's supposed to solve all the problems that we're having. That's really, it's really a organizational problems. But sure, we can use AI to help you solve this problem at your company. So I don't really see that fear happening here.
That's fascinating to know, like, that you don't see that over there, that it seems to be so
Yeah.
Americans have that.
Yeah, I mean, I have friends who have those arguments. You're not supposed to use AI for this, but it's not such a strong held opinion, and it's very clear that they have like read it on LinkedIn and just repeat it rather than having any experience on their own.
Yeah.
And since almost everyone I know work in tech, it's like, yeah, I still have to learn it. I can't refuse it. People realize that they have to understand it, but they don't rush to be early adopters.
Fascinating. Can I ask for one more question on that you just said? And I don't know if this is even appropriate to ask, but my brain just pinged something where you said that people adopt AI and they in your field, in your area of the world, they adopt it as something to use as a curiosity, is that they jump into it and they know that this is the thing that's supposed to X or whatever the case. I'm wondering why, like, you speak English very well. Obviously, everybody around you has to because you work in tech, like you said, and it's really important to know that language. So you've already had experience doing exactly what you just said, basically saying, okay, I have to adopt this thing
Mm,
because it is the thing. I can't refuse it. I can't refuse
mm,
to learn English and work in tech. I can't do that, right?
mm,
I have to. And so you've had practice, quote unquote, taking something that is technically external, but it's ubiquitous now and important now, and integrating it and finding the best way. Do you think that maybe part of the reason why it's much more approached in a positive way in your area of the world, speaking of AI, is because that's something that you've had to do in the past as well? And I'm not saying English or America is
mm.
ubiquitously good. We are not good, period, quote unquote. I'm just saying that you've had to do that before just to work in the field. So AI seems kind of similar to me.
Yeah, I think now you're speaking from my university degree. The first thing they said to us the first day of school was, whatever you are going to work with in 5 years when you graduate doesn't exist yet. So that was the mindset I started with. And like I said, almost every one of my friends like studied the same program. So that's what we've been taught. But still, that's just a small part. But I think maybe I'm around people who like change and who are curious in general.
Yeah. All right, Emma, it's been an amazing conversation. Thanks so much for being here on Open Builder Bar. Been fantastic to have you. We hope to have you back at some point, but until then, everybody have a great one, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emma.
Bye.
Yeah.